Daisy and the Trouble with Burglars. By Cass Gray. To Kathy, best wishes on your retirement. Chapter 1. The trouble with burglars is they are really hard to catch. If burglars were easier to catch, then my mom would never have got told off by a policeman this evening. Or let a policeman see her in her nightie. Or had her car taken away. Catching burglars is one of the hardest things to do in the whole wide world. Especially if you've only got one box of icing sugar. And no fingerprinting brush. And no microscopes either. Which isn't my fault. Chapter 2. I knew something exciting was happening this morning because the phone in our house rang at 6:52. The trouble with phone calls is it's really hard to know what's being said unless you are one of the people who is holding the phone. Even when I sat right up close beside my mom and strained my ears really hard, I still couldn't tell what she was talking about. Whatever was being said in the phone call was definitely, really, really interesting though. These are the words that I could hear clearly. Aha. 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 No. Aha. 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 New. Aha. They didn't? 3? In one night? Aha. 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 No. They never. Anything valuable? Aha. 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 That's terrible. Haddock? Haddock in cod too. No. 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 No burglar alarm then. I bet they'll get one now. As soon as Mom said the B word, I knew exactly what had happened. Well, not exactly. But almost exactly. Someone I wasn't sure who. Somewhere I wasn't sure where, had for absolutely definite. Wait for it, been burgled. Chapter 3. As soon as Mom put the phone down, I jumped on her lap and asked her who she had been talking to. The trouble with jumping on someone's lap is you shouldn't really do it if they are holding a cup of tea. Luckily my mom had been talking on the phone for ages, so her tea wasn't very hot. It was still a bit wet though. When she had dried herself, she told me that the person who had rung her before 7 o'clock in the morning was Grampy. Apparently Grampy had walked to the shopping parade early that morning to collect his newspapers, and guess what? When he got to the parade, there were police cars all over the place. Not outside the newsagents outside the fish and chip shop. That's the trouble with fish and chips. Burglars can't resist them. And that's not all they can't resist. Not only had the burglars burgled the fish and chip shop, they had burgled 2 actual houses in the same actual night too. And in the same actual town. The same actual town where me, Mom and Nanny and Grampy actually live. As soon as I found out that 2 actual houses had been burgled in our actual town, I ran to the window to see if anyone had been burgled in our street too. But there weren't any police cars to be seen. So I ran back to my mom to hear more. Mom said that after Grampy had paid for his newspapers, he had bumped into the fish and chip shop owner outside the shop. According to the fish and chip shop owner, burglars had broken into his fish and chip shop in the middle of the night. But not only that. According to Grampy, they had done it under the cover of darkness. The trouble with the cover of darkness is it covers you really darkly. I reckon as soon as a burglar gets right under a cover of darkness, it's a bit like wearing an invisible cloak. Especially if they're wearing a black jumper too. And black trousers. And black shoes and a black mask. Black everything really. That's what I'd wear if I was a burglar. Grampy said he reckoned the burglars had probably broken into the fish and chip shop because they were trying to steal all the money in the till. Fish and chip shops make loads of money selling fish and chips. Especially large cods and medium skates. What the burglars didn't know, though, is that the fish and chip shop owner had emptied his till the evening before. So when the burglars tried to steal all the money, they found there wasn't any money in the till to steal. Mom reckoned that's why they stole some big bags of frozen cods and haddocks instead. I reckon they might have just worked up an appetite. Especially if they had burgled 2 actual houses already. When I asked what the burglars had stolen from the houses, she said Grampy didn't know. One of the houses that had been burgled was in Hollyway, though, and the other one was in Cypress Drive, which were both almost nearly quite close to where we live. But Mum didn't know what had been taken. Probably jewels and whopping big tellies. Plus salt and vinegar for the burglars' fish and chips. Chapter 4. As soon as I found out that actual burglars had been doing actual burgling in the actual town where I lived, I knew exactly what I had to do. Number 1, ring Gabby. Number 2, start a detective agency fast. Well, fastish. The trouble with starting a detective agency fast is it gets a whole lot slower when your mom suddenly thinks of loads of other things you need to do first. Like get dressed, have your breakfast, and clean your teeth. Mom said my detective work would be a whole lot better if I was investigating on a full stomach and without sticky-uppy hair. When I told her that the burglar's trail would be getting cold and that I really needed to get on the case straight away, she wasn't the slightest bit interested. In fact, she even made me put my breakfast spoon and bowl in the dishwasher. And damp my hair down with a really wet flannel. I mean, what is the matter with her? Hasn't she seen actual detective programs on the actual telly? Doesn't she know that actual detectives on the actual telly never have time to damp their hair down? Or pick their clothes and toys up off their bedroom floor? Top detectives just get a phone call, find out there's a burglar and get on the case. Fast. But not in our house. Thanks to my mom. In our house, burglars get given loads of time to escape before I'm even allowed to think about starting a detective agency. I mean, do you know what time it was when I was actually allowed to ring Gabby? Do you know what time it was when I was actually allowed to tell her that she needed to get over to my house really fast because we were soon going to be on the trail of dangerous criminals? 8:20. Oh well, better late than never, I suppose. Chapter 5. When I told Gabby that a house in Hollyway and another in Cypress Drive had been burgled, plus the fish and chip shop had been burgled too, she squeaked like a guinea pig. Gabby said this was easily the best start to a summer holiday we had ever had. And she was right. When I told her we were going to catch the burglars ourselves by starting our very own detective agency, she nearly dropped the phone. That's the trouble with starting a detective agency. It's exciting and dangerous at the same time. I said it wouldn't matter how dangerous things got as long as we practiced our martial arts skills in my bedroom first. Burglars are defenseless against karate chops and really good wrestling holds. Especially if you get them round the neck. Gabby said her mom kept a pair of pink furry handcuffs in her bedroom and she would ask if we could borrow them. Then we made a list of all the other detective equipment we were going to need. The trouble with magnifying glasses is no one in Gabby's family has got one and neither has my mom. Plus no one had any bulletproof jackets we could borrow either. So we decided we wouldn't put them on our list at all. Luckily we had all the other things we needed. Notebooks, for doing interviews. Pens, for taking statements. My mom's camera, for photographing evidence. Orange squash, for drinking after chasing burglars. Crisps, for energy. Icing sugar, for fingerprinting. All we had to do next was meet up, decide on a name for our detective agency, do our combat training and get started. Chapter 6. By 9:10, Gabby and I were both black belts in burglar fu, which is a bit like kung fu, only it's better for fighting baddies who are trying to bonk you on the head with silver candlesticks or flat-screen tellies. By 9:15, the D&G burglar bashing and catching agency was nearly open for business. When I told Mom that Gabby and Elle were starting our own detective agency and that she wasn't going to be in it, she didn't seem bothered at all. Gabby said behavior like that was very suspicious. If my mom carried on not wanting to chase burglars, people might think she was on the burglars' side. I said there was no way that a burglar would want my mom in her gang. For a start, she's usually in bed by 10 o'clock, she'd never be able to carry a 50-inch screen telly by herself, she never drives above about 45 miles an hour, plus she never wears black. We still made her the first name on our list of suspects though. Because we wanted to try out our pens. After we'd made sure our notebooks and pens were working, we went through our list again and packed our crime detection bags. The trouble with crime detection bags is they don't want to be too big and they don't want to be too small. If your crime detection bag is too big, it might slow you down when you're chasing a burglar. But if it's too small, you might not be able to fill it with valuable evidence, such as burglar masks that have been thrown into bushes in a hurry, or burglar trainers that have come off in deep mud. The best crime detection bags have two right-sized compartments, one that's just the right size for valuable evidence and one that's just the right size for all the really important crime detection things you need. Especially icing sugar. The trouble with icing sugar is mums don't like you borrowing it. Especially if you need the whole box. Icing sugar is the most important thing to have in your crime detection bag if you need to dust for fingerprints. Trouble is, mums just want to use it for icing cakes. When Gabby asked to borrow the whole box of icing sugar out of her kitchen cupboard, her mom stopped her before she could even put it in her bag. Even when Gabby explained what we needed it for, her mom wouldn't let her have any. Not even a spoonful. Or any handcuffs. So we decided to borrow the icing sugar from my kitchen cupboard instead. Without asking my mom. That way she couldn't say no. The trouble with borrowing things without asking is it helps if the person you're not asking isn't there when you decide to not ask them. Trouble is, my mom was. She was standing in the kitchen, right in the way of the cupboard, so there was no way we could take the box out of the cupboard without her noticing. So we needed to create a diversion. The trouble with diversions is they have to be really good or your mom won't look the other way for long enough. If your mom doesn't look away for long enough, it doesn't give you enough time to get the box of icing sugar out of the cupboard and put it in your bag without her noticing. The trouble with a pretend coughing fit diversion is you need lots of room to do it in. Which was okay actually, because the kitchen door was open and it was a lovely sunny day outside. It was Gabby who did the pretend coughs. Actually, they started off as coughs, but then they became more like chokes. At first my mum just stayed by the cupboard and patted her on the back, but when I gave Gabby the secret wink, she did her biggest ever splutter, wobbled out into the garden, fell down, rolled over and over on the lawn, and then started panting like a hot hyena. Which meant my mum had no choice but to run out into the garden to save her. Gabby did a really, really good job at pretend coughing, because not only did I have time to put the whole box of icing sugar in my bag, I had time to get the camera from the drawer in the lounge, plus put some bonus scissors in my bag too. Just in case we got tied up by burglars during our investigations and needed to cut through the ropes. I think my mom was quite surprised when Gabby recovered from her coughing fit so quickly. She was quite puffed out too, after carrying her back into the kitchen. She made Gabby have a drink of water and do about 12 really deep breaths before she would let her start playing with me again. But at 9.29 she gave Gabby the all clear. By 9.30 the D&G burglar bashing and catching company was finally in business. And things were going really well until about 9.31. Chapter 7. I could not believe it when, just as Gabby and I stepped out of the front door to start our investigation, my mum shouted, "Have fun, Daisy. And don't go further than the end of the road." Don't go further than the end of the road? The trouble with not being allowed to go further than the end of the road is it makes doing a burglar investigation almost impossible. I mean, how can anyone do a proper burglar investigation if they're not allowed to go further than the end of the road? Scooby-Doo is allowed to go further than the end of his road. Plus that detective on the telly with the funny mustache is always going further than the end of his road. Even Gabby is allowed to go further than the end of her road. So why not me? Mum said I had never been allowed to play further than the end of the road without her being with me, and if Gabby and me wanted to chase burglars, we would have to do it where she could see us. Because that way she would know we were safe. Safe? Since when was chasing burglars meant to be safe? When I told my mum that Gabby's mum lets Gabby go loads further